Hello, welcome to a live edition of Founder Exchange. My guest today is my friend Diego Saez, who is the founder of Pachama, which he just told me won the most innovative AI company in the world from Fast Company.
That's right.
Amazing. And so we're going to learn a little bit about his journey because I've known Diego for 5 or 6 years now. I knew him prior to starting Pachama and would really love to explore his journey from start to where he is today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
All right. So everyone else starts out talking about what you're doing today, which I definitely want to hear about. It's the most interesting, one of the most interesting companies, I think, in the startup universe today. Well, let's reverse back to when we met. And when we met, it was kind of the most exciting and time around consumer hardware.
Yep.
And you were building a smart suitcase.
That's right.
And we featured that suitcase called Blue Smart in our stores at launch time.
Yep.
Thank you for being an early adopter of data.
It was a great experience.
And I love the product. A lot of people love the product, but tell us what happened.
Yeah, and I can tell you how that idea came about. I am originally from Argentina. One day I went to visit my family for Christmas. I took a flight from New York to Buenos Aires, and we had a stop in Panama, and my suitcase got lost. I called the airline. The airline had no idea where my suitcase had gone. So that basically gave me the idea, how come we have smart watches, smart thermostat, how come we don't have smart suitcases that we can track?
Right.
And so I partnered with a couple of friends, Tommy, Alejo, some of them, and we decided to just build a suitcase that you could track with GPS and 3G, and that could also do other things. We launched a crowdfunding campaign that was very successful, got 10,000 orders. With that, we got into Y Combinator. That's where we met.
Right.
And we started producing the suitcases. When we effectively launched a product into the market, we launched with beta, and we were growing quite nicely. As you said, people were loving the product. We took everything we learned in the first generation, iterated into a second generation that had more products, different sizes of suitcases. And as the company was really getting ready to do an entrance into mainstream, if you want, from one day to another, airlines decide to ban lithium-ion batteries on airplanes because some Samsung phones had defective batteries that had.
Forgot about that.
You remember?
Yeah.
And we were basically part of the ban. All of a sudden, our products couldn't be checked into airplanes anywhere in the world. And
I remember at the time, your suitcase, the battery was underneath the inside of the suitcase, so a little harder to take out. Whereas
exactly
the way they've done it today is they have it has a removable battery right in the pouch, and they tell you to take it out. Right?
Which what's funny about that is that we designed it that way because the FAA, which is the Airlines Safety Association here in the U.S., had recommended us that if the battery was protected by a case, it was safer, right? So that very decision then didn't allow us to remove the battery, and then our products got banned.
So you decided, how quickly did you make the decision that it's time, it's not even worth, kind of continuing?
Well, the problem is that we had just placed an order with the manufacturers to manufacture, I think, 50,000 units. We, had committed all our capital into that production batch. And we didn't have enough money to pivot, to design something new. And no investor was going to invest in a company whose products were banned, right? However, we still had a lot of value. We had 12 patents, we had very innovative designs, and we had a team that was really good at bringing new innovation into the market. So we actually went and talked to the majority of the established brands on the luggage industry. And one of them, Travel Pro, decided to make an offer to buy our company, and we decided that was the best decision to minimize the losses for everyone, customers, employees, and vendors. Definitely a difficult decision. It's not what an entrepreneur wants to do, but it was kind of like a good landing considering the situation.
All right.
I was burned out. I was, defeated. I wanted to recharge, and I went off social media and everything, and I went to South America, to Argentina, and I have two brothers. I told my brothers, guys, I want to go on a trip. I'm burned out, and one of my brothers told me, how about we go to the Amazon rainforest? And I was like, sure, I never been. And we did a road trip from the north of Argentina. We crossed Bolivia driving, and then we got into Peru and ended up in an indigenous community in the Amazon rainforest. And that was a super powerful experience. People that live in a very different way than modern Western society. And it was a great way for me to reconnect with nature.
Did you find this place on a map, or did you read about it?
So my brothers took away my iPhone from me,
Okay.
and they forbid me from researching and planning. So it was really a trip of just arriving to a place, talking to people, asking them where we should go, and then
no electricity there, I'm assuming, or?
In the jungle where we got, there was already electricity, but they didn't have, just electricity for a few bulbs, right? But no any other electronics.
Sure.
And so that was the first very powerful experience for me. After that, I came back to New York, where I was living at the time, and culture shock, huge. I went from summertime in the jungle to wintertime in New York City. So it was definitely a couple of weeks of depression of like, what am I doing here? There is where I decided that I wanted to move to nature. But before doing that, I actually went to Asia. I had, to be for something in Hong Kong, and I took advantage of that to go to Thailand and learn to meditate in a monastery. So I got 14 days in silence in a Buddhist monastery in Chiang Mai, and that also was a very powerful experience to quiet my mind, or basically think about everything that had happened and think what I really wanted to do with my life. After that, I came back to New York and decided I wanted to move to the forest. And I moved from New York City to California, to the Santa Cruz Mountains, got a cabin in the middle of the redwoods, and from there started to think what I was going to do next. Read a bunch of books, meditated, started hanging out with people that were not from the tech industry, people from the more spiritual world, people from the more environmental world, and then I got this idea for Pachama, that in a way the seed of this idea was planted in the jungle, to be honest, when I saw how powerful the forests were. And then I figured that it was an opportunity to blend everything I had learned building technology companies and bringing innovation to the markets with this more personal call to do something about climate change and protecting the planet. And I wonder if these two worlds could collide into one single project. And this is what Pachama is about. I can tell you more about it.
Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah, so we're facing climate change, the biggest crisis that humanity ever faced. We have put too much CO2 in the atmosphere, and we need to stop immediately emitting CO2 from burning fossil fuels. But we also need to start thinking how we're going to take all this CO2 down from the atmosphere back into the ground to rebalance the carbon cycle on the Earth and to stop catastrophic warming of the planet. One of the solutions is to reforest. Trees, as they grow, they absorb CO2 and convert it into biomass, right? So we have a great opportunity to remove dozens of gigatons from the atmosphere by just planting a bunch of trees and protecting the existing forests that we have still in the Amazon, in the US, in Europe, everywhere. Now, the way that we can fund that reforestation and forest conservation is by harnessing carbon markets. Carbon markets allow companies to invest in carbon credits that remove CO2 from the atmosphere and use that on their journey towards net zero. Net zero means that companies need to compensate their emissions and arrive to a neutral impact into the climate, right? And more companies are committing to be carbon neutral, net zero. Now, this market of forest carbon credits is still very manual. So the way that we certify carbon credits, the way that we exchange carbon credits.
Just let me explain
Yeah.
carbon credit a bit more, because
Yeah.
and just tell me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Basically, you have companies that have committed to net zero to be sustainable, or even sometimes net positive.
Correct.
But they don't themselves, they're not necessarily going to go out and plant forests.
Correct.
Or build solar projects. So instead, they buy
Yes.
some kind of actually what exactly is considered a unit, like a carbon credit?
1 ton of CO2 removed from the atmosphere.
So scientists have measured the carbon positive effects of these different
Solutions,
clean
yeah.
projects, and companies can pay other I guess these people who actually plant forests or
Yeah.
build solar projects, they can pay them for the positive contribution to the environment.
Yes.
But they don't have to do the work themselves.
Correct. So you have a forest owner or a landowner in, let's say, Brazil, that if they were to reforest 1 hectare of land, then 300 tons of carbon could be sequestered in the next 2 decades, right? So we want these people to be incentivized to do that. So the system allows for you to pay a landowner to plant trees and sequester that carbon, and then sell the carbon credits that they get for doing those activities. And then the companies that are looking to achieve carbon neutrality can buy those carbon credits, and the money ends up going to this farmer that is doing the work and planting the trees.
Right.
Now,
is this how most of the large companies that have made climate pledges are actually getting there? Is it through carbon credits?
So that is a part of a climate plan. The first step is to measure your footprint. You need to know how much are you emitting into the atmosphere. The second step is to reduce your emissions, and that means electrifying your fleet. It means sourcing renewable energy. It means working with your supply chain to reduce the emissions on the supply chain. But there is a core of emissions that cannot be immediately reduced, and that is the part that you need to compensate. And it's good, we should encourage companies to go 1 step farther and invest in compensating those emissions. And we need to make sure that these investments go to credible carbon credits, right? To carbon credits that effectively represent removals of emissions from the atmosphere. So there is where technology has a very important role to play, because today with satellite images and artificial intelligence, we can measure and verify from afar how much carbon is being sequestered by a forest anywhere in the world. So in doing so, we can bring more transparency and more accountability to these frameworks.
So how does that work? This is
your
core technology, right?
That's the core technology of what we're building. We are building a pipeline that ingests satellite data from a lot of different sources, and we train algorithms combining the satellite data with ground truth that comes from different places around the world. And our algorithm basically learns that a certain greenness, a certain heights of trees contain a certain amount of carbon. And then we can apply that algorithm to images that come from the satellite providers pointing to a particular project. And we can verify how much carbon is there, how much deforestation is happening in the region, and then we can continue to monitor this project is delivering on their promises of conserving or restoring land. So we use that data to then help project developers gain more credibility in the market, and companies trust the projects in which they are interested in investing. And 1 step farther, we plan to use this technology to help start more forest projects, right? So if we can bring that transparency, then there's going to be more confidence from investors to invest in this type of projects. And the more money coming in, the more landowners that are going to be willing to say, hey, you know what? Instead of doing something else with my land, I'm gonna regenerate, protect this forest.
Right. So that's something that I was curious about, because I would think that, I mean, land is super valuable. It's becoming more valuable every second of our lives.
Sure.
And obviously there are a lot of ways to use land that could be very profitable.
Yeah.
How does someone that owns this land come to the decision to plant, to like monetize with carbon credits versus corn or something else?
Yeah, I would say that in the first generation of carbon projects, there is a lot of good intentions, right? People that want to do the right thing and that say, you know what, I could be making more money doing cattle ranching or soybean, but I instead want to do a positive impact in the world, and I'm willing to forego part of the profitability. But as the price of carbon credits go up, and we expect
And why does the price of a carbon credit go up?
Because more companies are going into the market. So more demand, higher price, and more regulations as well.
So companies that got in early on carbon neutral, they paid less for the same thing that companies would pay today.
Yes, and price, it will continue to go up, and that's a good thing, because the service that those forests provide is really high for the planet.
Worthwhile for people
exactly.
to do this. Okay.
And so in the future, as the price per ton of carbon continues to rise, there will be more landowners that will just be economically incentivized. They will say like, well, I actually can make the same amount of money or more from restoring a forest and selling the carbon credits and doing something else. And we want that, because that is paying for the environmental services that these ecosystems are providing to the planet by cleaning the planet in a way. These forests are sequestering this carbon, and the economy should pay for the carbon sequestration.
I don't know if you read this. Do you still read Hacker News?
I do, yes.
Yeah, there was an article maybe a month or two ago that, and apparently Bill Gates is now the largest landowner in the U.S.
I read that. Yeah.
Is he using his land? Is this why very, very wealthy people, or mostly philanthropists now, are they buying land for this purpose, or?
Well, I don't know specifically about Bill Gates, but yes, land, when you look at the chart of where the emissions come from, yes, the majority comes from burning fossil fuels, but the second source of emissions is land. When we convert a forest into agriculture, and if we practice monoculture and the traditional sort of like ways of agriculture, we're releasing a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, right? So soil can be a great store of carbon if we do regenerative agriculture, if we do reforestation, and if we do just sustainable management of that land. So yes, I do think that there are many landowners that are seeing that land will become, a source of carbon sequestration, and therefore a valuable asset on the key decades of solving climate change.
All right. Can you also predict with the same type of algorithm is there a difference between the types of trees that are actually better for this exact problem, or?
Yeah, I mean,
or even land. Is it better land for this than others?
Yeah, what scientists generally recommend is that you reforest an area with the native species that adapted to that region for millions of years. Now, it's also true that with a changing climate, now we need more resilient species because the climate is going to be warmer. It is already warmer, right? So I definitely think that with remote sensing technologies and just with better data, we can do more effective planning of what to plant where. And we hope that our technologies can also help on that.
So let's talk about building the company a little bit, because
sure.
you started with the technology just described, and then I think about a year into your company, you built a marketplace so companies could directly invest in reforesting carbon credits.
Yeah.
But over I feel like the last year or two, you've kind of announced a bunch of different partnerships, a bunch of different ways for companies to use your service. How have you kind of gone about the process of commercializing this?
Yeah, so we built this technology to be able to analyze forests from space. We started applying it by analyzing existing forest projects and bringing those to companies that wanted to invest. Then we built an online platform so that any company and anybody can come and invest in those projects and buy carbon credits on those projects. And we launched as well an API so that we can integrate with services that want to offer carbon neutral products or services in their platforms. And more recently, we announced a partnership in which we are, for the first time, helping start new forest projects from scratch, and in which our technology can serve to measure from the beginning of a project the impact of those projects. Ultimately, the vision of the company is we want to expand this market. We want more companies making the right thing and investing in reforestation and nature conservation. We want more landowners putting their land at the service of climate change, right? And to do that, we needed to build a platform that brought credibility and transparency and efficiency, right? So the marketplace, in the same way that now, thanks to Airbnb, it's so easy to rent an apartment in Paris, or thanks to Uber, it's so easy to hail a ride in Mumbai, right? So we wanted to make it equally easy for a landowner anywhere in the world to make money by restoring nature.
Right. So, in the marketplace, and I'm curious if it's an analogy or if it is truly a marketplace, because is there unlimited supply of carbon credits today, and if not, is that why you're starting to think about planting forests?
Yes, that's right. We need. There are many projects, but we need way more if we are going to solve climate change, right? So definitely, it is a growing marketplace in that there is a demand side, there is a supply side, but we need more of both. So we hope that by building the platform, the market will expand, right? And
so which one is ahead today? Is the demand ahead of the supply?
I'll say so. I would say so, especially with all these pledges of companies that are committing to long-term investments.
Right.
Right now, a bigger question is how do we bring more reforestation and conservation projects at speed to the market?
So from a kind of an economic perspective, you have, and you guys have done a tremendous job of bringing demand, I think, at least from the outside. Are you kind of gathering demand and then shifting those resources from project to project, or is it something where you have people who are have these reforestation projects, they're listing their carbon credits in some fashion, and then there's a bidding process? I mean, how do the mechanics of the marketplace actually work?
Yeah, no, good question. And each company is different. There are companies that have a set of criteria that they have of what they are looking for. It might be a geography, it might be a type of project, and then they use the marketplace, and we support them on selecting the projects that are right for them. For other companies, we put together portfolios, and just for a small business that doesn't have a big sustainability team who can go deep into analyzing projects, they can just go to our marketplace and select a portfolio and purchase the credits, and then we provide for them reports on how the money is channeled to different projects. And in the future, there might be, as you said, mechanics of bidding and asking to discover the right price. There's so much to build on the marketplace to make it more useful for the two parts. Right?
And on the supply side, you only have Pachama verified projects.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. And in the future, we might have even Pachama originated projects, right? The analogy I'm using is Netflix originals, right? Netflix has movies by other studios, and then they started to help, produce movies themselves, right? So,
I like that. If I can, I'd like to buy the naming rights to a very large forest at some point.
Why not? We can make it happen. Whatever to drive funding to protect our planet.
So let's talk about funding, because you guys have raised capital from Amazon, and some of the best funds in the world are supporting you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, do they view this as a investment, financially speaking, or is it strategic for them? What is their lens when they invest?
Yeah, so I think that we made sure that all the investors that come to our company are driven by the right reasons and by the mission of helping solve climate change by restoring nature. And I think they all do. Many of the funds that we taking money from have that stated mission on their funds, right? Like Breakthrough Energy Ventures, Amazon with their Climate Pledge Fund, Lower Carbon, which is Chris Sacca's fund. But in addition to that, they see a market opportunity. They see that we could become a very big company. And I think that that is a good thing. We want market mechanisms to incentivize investments on restoring nature. If solving climate change is one of the biggest problems of our generation, rewarding the solution of one of the biggest challenges to civilization should be, a good economic opportunity.
Would you allow big-time polluters on your cap table?
Look, I think it's a decision we'll have to make if that comes. I do have, I can tell you my philosophical lens. I think that we are all part of the problem. We're all polluters, right? I want, except for Greta Thunberg, who traveled on a sailboat, from Europe to the US, we all, catch flights, and we're all part of the problem. We all, drive cars, we all eat meat. And I don't. Yeah. I don't either. I don't. I'm trying to reduce my carbon footprint as much as I can, but it's so easy to throw, a stone to the polluters when we are all polluters, right? So I think it's important to, instead of pointing fingers, finding enemy images, is to say, well, we all need to be part of the solution. Oil companies need to transform into something else. If we get to transform an oil company into a forest restoration company, wouldn't that be super cool? Yeah. Imagine if 30 years into the future, Shell, instead of extracting oil, is planting trees. Yeah. That would be cool, So I think that.
But it's interesting, because I think that, a lot of, like, in some ways, making this a financial problem is very convenient because, in theory, at some point, if there's more supply coming online and the price of these things becomes more known, then you can get away with making statements about being carbon neutral, but be doing extremely damaging actions for the planet, right? And because it's just money, so it comes out of your margin, right?
Yes, and that's why we need to demand companies to be way more transparent when they make claims, right? We need companies to share what is their footprint, what are they doing to reduce their footprint, and then where the money that they're using to compensate their footprint is going to, and to not, count it as just, money that is going somewhere, but they are sponsoring a project, right? And they want to be accountable for those projects as well. So it is tricky because, it could be an easy out for irresponsible companies, but I think that that's why we need the transparency that technology can provide, right? And at the end of the day, what we're creating here is an economic system that allows for the payment for ecosystem services and the inclusion of externalities that in the past companies could easily get away with.
Do you see yourself adding more than just reforestation to the marketplace? Do you see yourself getting into solar or other clean tech projects?
So I think that we have a long way to go with nature. After forest, I would love to expand into oceans. You can restore ocean ecosystems to sequester carbon. There is agriculture, which is quite interlinked with forest through agroforestry. But yeah, if we have the engine of nature restoration well fine-tuned, we could expand into other things. The purpose of the company is to protect our living planet, and the mission today is restoring nature to solve climate change. But I do hope that Pachama can be this force of good, putting technology at the service of driving funding to protecting and restoring our planet.
So not to put you on the spot, but I mean, Pachama is a for-profit company, and I'm sure that some folks have asked you about why this isn't a nonprofit, because it's such a great mission. Yeah. I mean, what happens if, let's say, you're right, and I mean, certainly you're right about the problem, but you're also right about the solution in a big way. Yeah. And I think very clearly, if you're right, over the next 20 or 30 years, this company will become very, very successful, very large. You will personally become very successful. Mm-hmm. What is your lens on success when you have this kind of social good mechanism? I mean, do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely started this company because I want to make a contribution to the world, not because I want to become rich whatsoever. I during that time of exploration, I realized that money doesn't make you happy, and I decided to move to a cabin into the forest, right? So no one that came to this company is driven by the economic incentive. But as it happens, I believe that technology startups, for-profit technology startups, are a really great vehicle to create globally scalable value. And to give you an example, Airbnb is a company that has unlocked this huge market for people to stay in some other people's home. Well, before Airbnb, there was Couchsurfing. Do you remember Couchsurfing?
Yeah,
Couchsurfing was a Couchsurfing was a .org because it was a non-profit.
Yeah.
And Couchsurfing, as a non-profit, started doing this, but they didn't have the investors to then hire great engineers, to build great technology, to build great support, and to really expand this globally. But then Airbnb came along as a for-profit company, raised venture capital in Silicon Valley, hired great engineers, and was able to unlock this solution at a global scale. So I just think that using this shape as a vehicle increases the chance of this becoming a globally successful platform that then can help, instead of 100 farmers, hopefully 10,000, tens of thousands of farmers around the world plant trees, and in doing so having a true impact on the planet.
Yeah. This is a tricky question because I think we're dealing with a lot of, I've seen it even for beta at different points. People, they walk into their store and like, oh wow, this represents, it represents like this, all these forces of tech trying to change the world, and people don't like that. And you kind of, I remember my first week at Google when they had acquired Nest, and in the employment, they have the new onboarding flow for employees, and they have this like day where they indoctrinate you into the Google way, and you get like a little hat with the spinner on it.
Yeah.
But like the thing I remember from their presentation was that, because I just don't talk about this publicly, but like Google is one of the biggest clean tech companies in the planet.
Yeah.
I think they're the largest owner of solar projects on the planet.
Yeah.
They've been investing in, and they sort of like, I think they feel this not just because out of the goodness of their hearts, but I think there's it's expensive to run a business like theirs unsustainably, and increasingly so.
My take is that we need everyone to work on solving climate change. We need activists, we need non-profit organizations, we need governments, we need people organizing themselves on the ground, and we need companies as well, right? So every actor of the economy should be thinking, well, how do we become a force of good? How do we become part of the solution, not part of the problem? So in the startup world, there weren't that many startups solving climate change. So I also thought, well, here we have the best engineers in the world and all this venture capital. How come we don't put that at the service of solving climate change? So I also hope that Pachama could become an example that you could create a startup with the mission of solving climate change. And in the last 2-3 years, I've seen many more come out, and now there's kind of like a climate tech movement in Silicon Valley, and investors wanting to invest in climate tech. So I think that is great too. We should encourage more entrepreneurs to put their energy into things like solving climate change.
Yeah, no, totally. So tell me about what does the company look like today, and how many people work there, how much you've raised, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we are 21 team members today.
All in the US?
No, we are a remote company. We have team members in Australia, Ireland, Austria, Argentina, and the US. Those are the countries where we have team members today, which is a challenge because we have a lot of time zones. But it's fun, and we get to work with talented people from all over the world. We have a few hundred customers on the demand side. We have a few dozen projects on the supply side. We raise money from, as I said, several investors here in Silicon Valley, we did 2 seed rounds, early days still for the company, but growing nicely.
So tell me, last question. I would love for you to know, in your eyes, what is, if and when you're successful and this grows, what does the planet look like? What is the planet you want to live in?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. We lost 50% of the forest that used to cover the planet. that to me is painful, because not only we release all that CO2 to the atmosphere, but we also lost the habitat for so many species that are endangered today. That is the second crisis, by the way, that we're living. We're living a climate crisis, we're living a biodiversity crisis. Some people say that this is the sixth largest extinction, or sixth largest extinction that the planet has lived through, and is driven by humans. And in the future, I think we can revert that. 50 years from now, I imagine that we have recovered at least half of the forests that we lost. And in those restored forests, we have many species out of endangered status, and we have thriving ecosystems. We have a big part of the economy based on nature restoration, meaning that we have millions of people whose livelihood depend on restoring nature, people whose job is planting and taking care of trees. Of course, we have decarbonized the economy. Oil is not the main source of energy on the planet, and it's more solar and wind and other breakthroughs that we will make in renewables. And that climate change is something of the past, and we're, thriving towards a civilization that is both technologically advanced and yet incredibly sustainable. A circular economy in which everything that is taken out is put back into the system.
What a wonderful vision for the future of our planet and our species. Thank you so much, Diego, for joining me today.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure.